musical, linguistic objects.
Greetings from Cyberdelic Space. This is Lorenzo, and I'm your host here in the Psychedelic Salon. And before we get started today, I first would like to thank Andy W., William K., and longtime saloner and donor Andrew O., all of whom made donations to the salon to help offset some of our expenses with these podcasts. So Andy, William, and Andrew, thank you all for your support and for being a part of the salon. Now, a few days back, one of our fellow saloners either posted a comment or sent me an email saying that he liked all of the latest podcasts, but he was really in the mood for some more Timothy Leary. Well, you'd better be careful what you ask for, because you're in for 2 or maybe even 3 podcasts in a row with the good Dr. Leary. And don't worry, I'll get these out in less than 3 weeks, but what I'm going to play covers 3 hours. It was a 3-hour-long interview, and that's way too long for a single podcast. However, all the material seems to go together. I've actually only heard the first third of it, but I'll try to get these out as close together as I can, and I'm looking forward to hearing the next part myself, so I won't drag my feet on that. And in case you think that I've got some kind of a grand plan as to how I program these podcasts, I can assure you that that is about as far from the truth as can be. You see, a couple of years ago, my friend Bruce Damer connected me with Dennis Berry, who at the time was the custodian of the Timothy Leary archive. And thanks to Dennis and Bruce, I've now been able to play a lot of the audio material from that archive, which, as you know, has now been acquired by the New York City Library. And so I've been sprinkling in a Dr. Leary program every month or so, but when my computer crashed earlier this year, I lost my master copy of which of the Leary talks I'd already podcast. So now I have this great big file full of his talks and interviews, but I'm not sure which ones I've already played for you. So today I decided to work from the bottom of the file and just spot check each one of them in order and see what the sound quality was like, and then see what the content was. Well, only a few items from the bottom, I came across 3 one-hour recordings from an interview that Dr. Leary did on KPFK radio in Houston, Texas, a city that is very dear to my heart, as that is where my 2 sons were born, where I attended law school, and where I also practice law. In fact, I was actually practicing law in Houston at the time this recording was made, in a studio somewhere probably not far from where I was. Now, what I'm going to play for you right now is the first hour of that radio interview with Dr. Timothy Leary, and it was on the Houston, Texas Pacifica radio station on November 13th, 1976, which means that this was one of his first interviews after being released from prison in April of that same year. And I should mention also that the long introduction we are now going to hear is exactly as it was on the tape. This is how they started their radio show.
He flies so high, he swoops so low, he knows exactly which way he's gonna go. Sometimes I make very clear in my public lectures, as I'll make clear right now, I don't want anyone listening to this program to believe anything I say. I don't believe in belief, in the sense that belief is a static structure that your mind and your brain use to repetitiously program experience. I do now, and have for many years, considered myself to be, as you said, a simple code clerk. I'm trying to decipher the genetic code to find out why we're here. I think that scientific laws and scientific order can provide us the directional and navigational clues to why we're here and where we're going.
Dr. Timothy Leary is out of prison, still to all appearances a person who aspires to be a leader of men. Behind him stretches one of the most controversial careers of our time. In front of him is an aspiration to move mankind into the next step of human evolution. Is this man to be believed? Not really, as he says himself. What then are we to make of this man, his ideas, and his example? Perhaps in this two-part presentation we will find out. What we will hear in this program is essentially one long interview given by Dr. Leary in Houston, Texas on November 13, 1976. Dr. Leary arrived in Houston willing to discuss any of the rumors and suspicions about his recent past. He was also eager to talk about his current plans for space migration, increase of intelligence, and extension of life. Part 1 of the program will deal primarily with the past of Timothy Leary. Part 2 will deal with Tim Leary now. We're very happy to be honored by a visit from Dr. Timothy Leary. Mr. Leary hasn't been doing too much speaking out in public since he's been released from incarceration, and this is an opportunity for a lot of people to find out a lot that they might be wanting to know from Dr. Leary. Our guests include Howard Pearlstein, who is Director of Publications at the Contemporary Arts Museum here in Houston, and Dr. Henry Marshall, a psychologist from the Texas Research Institute of Mental Sciences. Henry Marshall is working in psychohistory, and part of his work involves a study of Dr. Leary. I must say it's a pleasure to see you, Mr. Leary.
Very happy to be here.
How you doing?
Doing great. Never better.
Enjoying Houston?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think Houston is, it has a claim to be the city of the future. It's just flatlands here with all those towers pointing upward, and a lot's happening here, and I can feel the energy, and glad to be part of it.
It gets very energetic sometimes. I don't know, it's not quite as mellow as it might appear, but there's tremendous energy that appears in growing plants and vines and in the minds of people from time to time. And we see it reflected in this radio station and feel it sometimes in this radio station and the relationship between the people that are operating it and the people who are listening. Sometimes it's very strong. Well, Howard, I'd kind of like to pass the ball to you.
Okay, I got it. The question that seems to focus on is the term guru. In its more classic sense, guru is a term that does not specifically mean teacher, but one who exemplifies the way. Since you describe yourself as a code clerk for the DNA code, and that information being a way that has been shown to you, maybe we can clarify the whole guru, teacher, non-teacher, or merely another disciple along the way.
Well, I'm a little uneasy about the term guru. Of course, any term, however good it is, can be misused. I've never called myself a guru. That's one of the 24 media images that's been laid on me by an anxious and disturbed public. I tend to shy away from the term guru because you get involved with concepts like perfect masters. If you're looking for a perfect master, you're recruiting yourself to be a perfect slave. I think that, sure, we learn from people who have information or who have some styles and energy techniques that will help us develop. I sometimes call myself a friendly radio broadcaster from station KDNA. Do you use K or W?
No, we're K. Yeah. You know, there actually was a KDNA.
Yeah.
In St. Louis.
Yeah.
Well, then you're really, basically the position that you're in is you're playing the game along with the rest of us, as we're all playing this game side by side of discovery.
But some people don't really care much about the meaning of the game. From my earliest years, I wanted to figure out what life was about. I wanted to find out why I was here so that my actions and my desires would have some meaning. I don't understand why everyone isn't mainly and centrally a philosopher, because if you aren't trying to figure that out for yourself, you're borrowing or begging or passively taking on somebody else's philosophy, and this may lead to situations that are unsatisfactory. There's one difference between my philosophy and many of the philosophies that you'll find taught by professors of philosophy in universities and colleges, and that is that I'm quite serious about it. See, it's an all-out proposition to me, and when I discover what I think to be a natural law or a signal from the DNA code as to how individuals or species are supposed to evolve, I act on it. This, of course, can get you in trouble. A philosopher never gets in trouble if his ideas are not new, or if his ideas simply mellow out and sustain the current anthill social structure. But if a philosopher's ideas are new, and if they are effective, and if they are accurate transcriptions of the DNA message, then you're going to shake things up. Then you're going to have people listening to you and changing, and you're going to bring about revisions and reformations in the understanding that we have of human destiny. So that it's inevitable that I live out my philosophy, because I really believe in it. I'm not getting paid by a philosophy department to hold down a tenure chair, or to win a Nobel Prize, or to win any of the anthill rewards for being clever at putting words together. Totally engaged and involved in what I'm doing, and thus my lifestyle changes. I've gone through at least over 30 different life changes in the last 20 years. And by life change, I mean different residence, different profession, different languages that I'm using to explain myself and talk to others, different goals. People often say to me, well, why, it's terrible, you're inconsistent and you're changing. Well, I look at them and I say, well, aren't you changing? The name of the game is change. That's the basis of evolution, and mutation and growth is to change. So that, I have played out parts, sometimes I call them B-movies. I've been involved in some of the most important social and cultural and political events of the last 15 years. I think this is inevitable. I didn't choose this. If I were to do it over again, I would probably avoid some of these political situations, but I don't know if you can. But I've been involved in many of these B-movies, prisons and Algerias and drugs and so forth. People don't realize that. They expect that I'm going to live up to some of these past movies. Well, like anyone who's, of course, when you're in the movie, you're playing full tilt, all out, to transmit that energy.
Forgive me for being the skeptical interviewer.
That's your function?
Yeah. I'm trying to picture you relating to, in late 1974, early 1975, when nobody quite knew exactly where you were, but the rumors were that you were somewhere in federal hands, and you were talking to a bunch of federal people. And I'm trying to picture you, as you were talking to me, I'm trying to picture you relating to those people and what you might have been telling them. I have spent the past couple of hours going through our files here on Timothy Leary, and I found...
Oh, you got a file. I'm going to file under the Freedom of Information Act.
Hey, you can look at them at any time. I understand... Somebody told me that this story was in the news, that you tried to buy a refrigerator the other day and you forgot your Social Security number, and that you had them call the FBI to get it. Is that true?
As a matter of fact, that is true. I had to get a credit thing, and I had to, it was actually to buy a car. I'm becoming very American, middle class, and I didn't know what my Social Security number was. The last time that I remembered using it, the last time I had a conventional job was at Harvard back in 1963. So I called Harvard, and they couldn't locate it. So I was thinking about how I'm going to do this. So then I personally called the FBI in San Diego and said, hey, you're there, you're public servants, you're servants of the taxpayer, and you guys are on the ball. I want to, want this information. So they called back in about 10 minutes. They're very embarrassed, and they said, well, you were never wanted in San Diego, and we don't have it here. So I said, well, get on your Watts free telephone line and call San Francisco or call Los Angeles. About an hour later, I got a phone rang, and I picked it up, and the guy said, "Hey, Tim, 6943891." I said, "What?" I didn't know who it was. It was an FBI agent, and he gave me the number, courtesy of the Los Angeles Bureau of the FBI. That leads us into the area you wanted to know about my conversations with law enforcement.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions.
Okay.
I have some. If you'd like to start off, you can go ahead. If you would rather not, I have some rather specific questions here that I'd like to ask you.
Yeah, well, let me say two things in preparation, and you can ask anything you want, and I'll react directly to the extent that I know the answers to your questions. I'll give them to you. Number one, the more I found out about what happened in the 60s, the more I realized that I was a pawn of plans and projects, and I was acting out scripts that were written by other people. For example, in the first September issue of Rolling Stone of this year, there was an interesting article in which FBI agents have openly admitted, proudly admitted, that they they forged letters to Eldridge Cleaver attacking me, signing the names of militant Black Panthers. And I remember very clearly the day in Algeria when Eldridge, who had been very friendly, suddenly came around to see me, and he was very angry. He said, "Look, man, you're ruining all my credibility with the Black brothers back in the States, because what am I doing here running a honky-tonk, hippy-dippy circus, and we're supposed to be fighting a revolution, and they want to know." And that led directly to the breakdown between me and Cleaver. Now come to find out, it was the FBI that forged those letters and deliberately provoked the quarrel between me and Cleaver.
Those bastards did all kinds of stuff like that back in the 60s.
Then they turned around and they wrote Huey Newton forged letters from Black Panthers saying, "What's Cleaver doing, breaking up white-black unity?" And that led directly, now it probably would have happened anyway, but it led directly, it provoked the breakdown between Cleaver and Newton. Now, I don't know yet what happened during much of the late 60s and early 70s and so forth, because there were so many double agents and because there was so many scripts being written, the authorship of which we may never know. I have no hard feelings about this. I think that my feeling about the FBI was that was the ball game, and they outwitted us. It's like pro football. They pulled a new reverse on us. So that I think it's, I feel a little sheepish that I was pushed into positions that I didn't understand. Secondly, I feel that I made a mistake in the 60s by becoming so violently partisan. I got very angry when I was thrown in prison for life during the Nixon administration. So that I did get involved. I became angry. And I don't think that anger is I don't believe in the politics of anger. And I regret this, because I think that it's our duty to educate the police, to relate to the police, to raise their consciousness. And I don't believe in us and them. I don't believe we can alienate ourselves from any aspect of society, particularly the people who run society. So that, in general, when I was in Folsom Prison, I realized that I had to make some reconciliation with the authority. I knew I would never get out of state prison until Ronald Reagan was knocked out of office. He actually resigned. And I knew that Brown would get elected. That was my bet, and that happened. I knew I'd never get out of federal prison as long as Richard Nixon was. It was a great break for me that Watergate happened. It was a great break for all of us, but we're talking about my situation. I don't think I'd be in this room right now if Richard Nixon was still in the White House. I'd still be waiting out the Carter administration to get bailed out. Now, during the last couple of years that I was in prison, I did spend time talking to government officials. I did not talk about, I did not inform anybody. First, number one, they knew more about what I was doing than I did, because I think very clear that they were their agents infiltrated into my home and into my projects all the way through the late 60s and 70s. The CIA actually orchestrated many of the moves I made. I didn't realize it, but they were doing it. So there was nothing I knew. See, I'm not a criminal. I've never had anything to do with dope dealing. The whole brotherhood myth was no brotherhood. I've never informed on dope dealers. I don't know anything about dope dealing. The government did release a press statement that I was informing on revolutionaries and on dope dealers. That was a press release by the Justice Department. Now, I consider that a test of intelligence.
After that, UPI and all picked him up, and then it was official. Leary has been giving information to federal authorities. They could say that as a fact, whereas before Leary is reported to have been giving information. You say that they already had all this information.
Do you think that if I was giving information, that the last thing in the world the investigators would do would be warning the weathermen that I was doing it? They certainly wouldn't be blurting it out. And I consider this really a test of intelligence. They did that deliberately to cause dissension and paranoia among drug takers, among the counterculture, and among the militant left. I think that was quite obvious, and it succeeded to a certain extent in creating paranoia in those that... There's another aspect to this. See, as again, I say I can't tell... I don't know everything that's going on. I'll tell you what I know, though, because I think it's of great interest to those who are interested in government conspiracies. After the Nixon administration came into power in late 60s, early 70s, one of the big functions of the Internal Security Division of the Justice Department was to go after dissidents, counterculture people, and such Democrats, because after all, Watergate was an attempt to bust Larry O'Brien, if you remember, and they were trying to set up Teddy Kennedy, and they were trying to literally put their enemies in prison. In those days, it is true that the Justice Department was putting a lot of energy into surveying and grand jurying and indicting and trying anti-war dissidents, the Chicago 7, the Gainesville people, the Camden. And at that time, they were looking for the weathermen. The situation now is entirely different, and I've been to Washington, I've talked to these people, I've observed, and I spent about 3 years studying the matter. And again, I don't know. We're involved in very murky. But I'm convinced, matter of fact, I know, that at the present time, the Justice Department has no interest in busting the weathermen. Number one, because the weathermen are infiltrated and they know exactly where the weathermen are. Number two, they know that if they get them, they can't try them because of electronic surveillance, which is illegal. So there's no way they can ever put them in prison. Number three, even if they could, they don't want any more trials. Even before the Carter election, under the Ford regime, they didn't want any more of these political trials because they lost them all. It was simply an embarrassment. Sure, it gave Nixon kicks, but after Nixon was out... Number four, to the extent that the weathermen are in any way an irritant to the American body politic, as defined by people in Washington, they'd much rather have them silenced underground and under observation than open running around today. So I will say to anyone listening who knows any people in the weathermen that I'm convinced that if they were to get a good lawyer, I don't mean a militant lawyer who wants to use them as martyrs, assuming they don't want to. But if they get a good lawyer and investigate it, I think that I'll put my reputation on the line. It's a risky thing to do, and say they have a 99 chance out of 100 that they would never do. They would never be tried, and they would never go to prison. And they'd be allowed to operate freely in the American culture. And maybe they don't want to do that. I know the government doesn't want them to do it. But again, the government I'm talking about is the government that existed in Washington a month ago, and with the Carter regime coming in, I heard that your Congressman Jordan is, for example, could be the next Attorney General.
Wouldn't be at all surprised.
Yeah. So again, any of these political or conspiracy theories have to change as we go along.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, that kind of answers quite a bit of this. I would like to go down through the questions once again. First thing is, okay, did you turn in attorneys for paying money to the Weather Underground to spring you?
Did I turn them in?
Well, did this happen? Did attorneys buy the Weather Underground? Did attorneys buy your escape? And did these attorneys subsequently get evidence presented against them by you?
Yes. Yeah. All that's true.
Okay. You want to elaborate?
Well, why don't you ask questions?
I don't really have any.
I've been through about 29 B movies, and yeah, I'd be glad to go into any
I'm not a
details on that.
suitable cross-examiner, really. I just, do you think this was one of those many scenarios in which we haven't quite discovered the scriptwriter yet?
Oh yeah, yeah. There's among three attorneys that were involved in my case, of four, at least two of them are double agents or even triple agents, since that they were number one, involved in actually planning criminal activities, which I was involved in, didn't know about, and second, they were acting as my attorney, and thirdly, they were involved fairly actively with the government. I call that a three-way attorneys. I wrote an article in the National Review called "The Outlaw Industry." Did you read it?
No, I didn't.
Yeah. In which I went into great detail about what I considered to be an outlaw industry, which is masterminded, in which the attorneys are the directors, the media is the producers, and the stars are outlaws who flash onto the scene for a brief period of time, and there's a whole scenario there. There's a search, then they're busted, there's grand jury, then there's a big trial, and then they're convicted, and they disappear from the scene, and a new series of outlaw criminal stars develop. In one year, 1973, I had a list of like 12 such outlaw people: the SLA, Patty Hearst, Squeaky Fromme, Joan Little, the Berrigans coming in and out, Eldridge Cleaver has come back.
How are you getting along with all the people who joined in an organization called People Investigating Leary's Lies?
Well, let's see. Specifically, you'd be talking about Baba Ramdas.
Particularly, yeah.
Yeah, he has agreed later that he was used politically by that, and he's expressed his regret for being involved in that. Allen Ginsberg was involved in that. He again has expressed regret and felt that, although I understand his position was rather...
he was not part of it. He agreed to speak there and did not oppose, but he tended to reestablish some reality at the place, yes.
Then there's my son Jack, who had been told a lot of lies about... they told my son Jack that I was informing on him, and I was trying to get him busted, for example. And that was the background of that thing. He and I... He was made mad because I pulled out and wasn't around for a while.
Yeah.
I'd seen him for 7 years, so he and I are friends again. Jerry Rubin, well, I don't know, Jerry, he's telling people that he loves me and wants to debate me. And
Jerry's name was not on the petition, actually, and the day of the press conference, there were several telegrams from people who had subsequently found out that he was on it, asking that their names be taken off of it. Ken Kelly's name was the only one on it, and quite a few telegrams came in saying, if we'd known that Jerry was involved in this, we wouldn't have signed.
So when you talk about, friends, see, the people I knew, Ginsberg, my son, Baba Ramdas, I don't know, I never met Ken Kelly. He's not a friend of mine. We have a lot of political differences. This guy I want to make clear. I'm very opposed to partisan politics, and the extreme right and the extreme left, which operate on bad vibes, are by definition my enemies, and I don't back away from that, and I'm not out to get them. On the other hand, I clearly am a threat to to bad vibration politics. So there's a talk about friends. The only other friend that was there from my past was Gene Schoenfeld, who actively tried to break the thing up with comedy. So there were no friends. There was all this rumor about friends, that I was informing on friends, or that my friends were denouncing me.
Well, at the conference,
Howard was there.
I attended it, and we went through it. And as a journalist, I was working to try and put together a story from it. The only things of interest that really came out was Allen Ginsberg's 44 questions, because he questioned all the premises. What we came out with was the hard information, so-called, they had, was that there was a videotape deposition that a woman who nobody knew, but who was later identified as somebody who works with the police in New York, had written about in Village Voice, which is not really enough to go on to even do a speculative article, and that's all I've ever heard of that. Then there was the report that you had informed on Bernadine Dorn at the grand jury, whose name you had also mentioned in
that was supposed to be a Chicago grand jury, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But that information had been published a couple of years before in Confessions of a Hope Fiend and in several other places. The only other thing that he got away with during the press conference, which we checked out with lawyers later, was that you reportedly testified against your attorney Chula for having brought you some dope in jail, and I was told later that, in fact, you had not testified at his trial.
That's right. Yeah, he was never done. Yeah, I'll talk about that. I've never talked about it publicly because Chula has got a lot of. I don't want to. He's got problems, and but now you bring it up, I'll talk about one point during a parole hearing. I was asked, did you on March something 1970 receive a small amount of hashish from Attorney George Chula? Now I remember that incident very well because I was in the Orange County Jail, and I was going to see Chula. And another prisoner came out, and he said to me, "Hey, man, thanks a lot." And I said, "Thanks for what?" And I went to see Chula, and Chula handed me a little block of hashish, which I immediately devoured because you're under the eye of a guard. And Chula told me that he had given the former prisoner some of my hashish, and that's why the prisoner was thanking me for hashish, so that it was obvious to me when the parole board brought this up. There was no way that I'd never mentioned it, or so that somebody had reported that to the authorities. So I said, yeah, Chula had given me hashish. So then the parole board turned me down. This is my record for parole for several reasons, but one of the reasons mentioned was that I had been taking legal drugs. I admitted to taking legal drugs in prison. So then I was called before a grand jury. They asked me that, and I said, yeah, essentially that. But they didn't indict Chula on that because, number one, there was no evidence, and number two, it was petty. So.
The general consensus of opinion at that time was that 6 months in the joint would do just about every dope lawyer in the country a little bit of good. Nobody took that terribly seriously one way or the other.
So I think there was a good deal of concern. I know I was very puzzled by what seemed to be your deafening silence at the time, that there were so many rumors and charges going on about you, when it seemed obvious that the government was doing something to make you sound like you were informing, and that people who had some contact with you were being very critical.
Yeah.
And I'm still puzzled, really, why you remain silent and just let that happen.
Well, all the time that I was in prison, both before my escape and afterwards, I never wanted to have visits from people except very close people that were very involved in my case, because I feel that the prisoner's situation is so different that honest communication between a prisoner and somebody on the outside. It's an undignified position to be in, so I was just as a matter of policy, didn't get involved in a lot of writing. And I was in close touch with certain people that I wanted. For example, Ken Kesey. I was in correspondence with Ken during much of that time. 2 or 3 other people.
You called the Brotherhood of Eternal Love issue really just a myth?
Yeah. See, the way that happened was when I escaped to Algeria and then went to Switzerland, I found out the CIA didn't want me, the FBI didn't want me, but the narcs did want me back, and Nixon wanted me back. And my lawyers have a memorandum which came from the White House on January 13th, 1973, in which the White House ordered their people overseas to bust me. Now, that's illegal because you can't bust an American citizen. Yeah. So there's some people around Nixon. It's the Liddy Haldeman group who are responsible for this sort of stuff. They did want me back. Now, what the government did was, in 1972, they invented what they call the Brotherhood of Eternal Love Conspiracy. And I was charged with 29 counts of drug dealing. Now, each of those counts had to do with some kid that I'd never met in Laguna Beach getting busted for hashish. They added up 29 Laguna Beach, Orange County busts and called it a conspiracy. And they indicted something like 30 people. Of those 30 people, I knew 2. One was a good friend of mine. One was I knew vaguely. The other 28 I had never heard of. Then they set a $5 million bail on me. This found them in Switzerland. Now, the reason they did that was to put pressure on the Swiss government to kick me out, because the Swiss government had essentially given me asylum and said, after all, he's a professor that's guilty of possessing 2 joints. So then they could come back to the Swiss government and say, hey, look, he's the grandfather of the hashish, LSD, mafia, and they invented the Brotherhood of Eternal Love. Now, there was a Brotherhood of Eternal Love, which is made up of about 7 or 8 surfers around Laguna Beach in the middle 60s who did a little grass dealing, and for a while they did a little hashish stealing from Afghanistan. It was all a very spiritual kind of Laguna Beach mysticism, surf mysticism, you know it. This group disbanded in 1968 when the central figure, a guy named Johnny Griggs, died of apparently an overdose of psilocybin. Then after that, the Brotherhood was known to be a bunch of my friends. So every dope dealer in Southern California who had any dope to peddle would say, this comes from the Brotherhood. It's like Johnny Walker Scotch, you know, or Timothy Leary Budweiser beer. So that I have literally thousands of people come up to me and say, hey, I tried some of your stuff. I said, what stuff do you mean? Get away from me. You know. So it was a chic commercial marketing thing to do. And every honky-tonk dope dealer in Southern California called himself a member of the Brotherhood. It's like Kennedy's PT boat. You know, we all dealt dope with Timothy Leary. So that the image of the Brotherhood became like a guerrilla Che Guevara romantic thing, deliberately picked up by Cecil Hicks, who's the district attorney of Orange County, and built up into this monster conspiracy. But the narcs know very well. The narcs know much more about all of this than I do, or any dealer does. And they knew very well that there was no conspiracy. And when they were very embarrassed about it when they got me back by kidnapping. Then they had these charges of 29 counts, and my lawyers were very eager to get me back into court on that, because then we could file habeas corpus, and I might have gotten out because the jurisdiction would have been brought down to Orange County, and they tossed those cases out of court so fast, which is that they didn't want to go to trial on a conspiracy brotherhood theory. So number one, there was no brotherhood. Number two, I don't know anything about dope dealing. Number three, I never testified about dope dealing.
When that warrant came out, it was approximately 7 weeks before the election in 1972. It was issued.
That's right. Yeah.
For Timothy Leary and 99 John Does was the first issuance before they had any names to fill in on it. That was issued a week after, trying to connect two points here which may not necessarily be related, but after Watergate they seem to be, after Nixon's famous appearance in San Jose in which several members of the press identified the people that were throwing eggs at him as members of the White House staff. The press members who traveled with Nixon, when he stood in the car and gave his double V sign as they started throwing eggs. And it seemed at the time, the impression received was that it was pre-election hype. I mean, you know, there was Orange County, which was thinking about other things. That was 72. The California Marijuana Initiative was in full force, and discovered 2 months before the election that there was Orange County was something like 41% in favor, which they felt was exceedingly dangerous of the initiative. A lot of that had to do with politics. At least that was in, you know, that was what it had to do. But at the time, that was what it was observed as.
Okay, a couple more questions. Did your activities have an influence on the death of Dennis Martino?
No. I don't know. I don't know how Dennis Martino died. They say he died of an overdose of drugs in Marbella, Spain. Dennis was involved in a lot of triple and quadruple agent stuff that I just have the slightest knowledge of. I was surprised and very saddened to hear about his death. I don't know anything about it. And I don't know who knows about it.
How about the names Billy Hitchcock and Michael Boyd Randall?
Mike Randall is an old friend of mine. Mike was one of the original members of the Brotherhood, and has been, and still is a friend of mine. I don't know of any activity, Michael, that any illegal activity except for some dope smoking. He's still a friend of mine, and he knows that I don't know anything about him and never testified against him. Billy Hitchcock is an old friend of mine who apparently was involved in a big, well, not how big it was, an acid transaction. I never knew much about this. Matter of fact, I was surprised in later years to find out that who it was that was making that acid. During the period before I went to prison, it was to everybody's advantage that I not know anything about or be involved very closely with people who were making acid, simply because I was out front. I made no bones about the fact that I was smoking grass and that I felt that consciousness change was something that was part of human development, so that any smart dealer would never be seen in public with me, and certainly I would never be the last one to have any active involvement in dope dealing or in acid manufacture.
Okay, this cross-examination is really getting tedious.
A lot of those questions were raised in that Craig Vetter article in Playboy,
yep,
which is since gone unanswered. So I guess 14 million people read that.
Yeah,
probably important.
Well, okay, I got
if you
a couple more.
Anything unresolved, finish it off and get back to the present work.
There were words during, I guess, late 74, early 75, that you were being held under very severe circumstances. Sleeping on steel sheets, I believe, was one of the words that was expression was used.
I've been in 29 jails and prisons in 4 continents. During 26 months of the 44 months that I was in prison, I was in solitary confinement. Part of this was because of my escape. The prison authorities were very angry at me when they brought me back because the escape had embarrassed them, and so I was thrown in various holes for about 6 months, and then Folsom for about 7 months. Then, I did a very hard time, and but I was never abused. I was never. There are a lot of rumors too. That the nature of my profession is one that rumors generate about me. There's hardly any lurid rumor or immorality or insanity that hasn't at one time or another been attributed to me by the left or the right. But
I'm looking for lobotomy scars, and I don't.
Yeah, right. There was for example, when I was sent to Vacaville, the reason I was sent to Vacaville was because they kept, anytime I'd make friends in prison, they immediately ship out my friends because they were afraid that I'd be the center of some sort of a resistance. So finally, my best friend at Folsom Prison was a man named Wayne Benner, who was considered the most dangerous prisoner in the state system. Not because of any violent tendencies, because he was an extremely intelligent person who was tying up the CDC on various suits, and he was in Max, it's called, in Folsom, and they couldn't transfer him, so they transferred me to Vacaville in a great hurry to get me away from activities, to isolate me from what they thought were activities of a physical sort at Folsom. So when I went to Vacaville, I went there not as a patient. Vacaville is a medical hospital, but I went there as a trustee, or call it the special H category. I was a worker. And but then the rumors went out, and Allen Ginsberg, who tends to be a little hysterical at times, was doing me no favor by running around the country accusing the government of putting me in a mental hospital. This is again the sort of rumors that generate, that sounded, that confirmed the favorite rumor of the right wing and the left wing, that I was brain toasted, or that I was, in bad psychological shape. Actually, I had the best time I've ever had in a prison in Vacaville. I had a trustee's job, which was nothing. I spent most of my time playing tennis, and I had nothing to do with I was not there as a patient, but I was able to investigate the rumors about Vacaville, because in a prison there are no secrets. Everybody knows what's going on. There's no way that you can have secret operations in a prison. Now, there may be some secret facilities none of us know about, but I don't think so. And I can tell you and your listeners that during the period that I was there at Vacaville, and my questioning leads me to say that even before I was there, there's never been any attempt to brainwash or to lobotomize, or to sure, maybe they proposed it at times. Prison kooks do that, but the legislature of California is very alert. It's a democratic legislature, and some very sophisticated lawmakers in Sacramento who watch the prison system like hawks. There's all these rumors about Vacaville, which have tremendous currency. I had the experience of being in Vacaville, reading the Berkeley Barb, with front-page exposés of brainwashing and behavior modification and lobotomy at Vacaville. It really irritated me, because false rumors, I even think, are sometimes originated by the right wing, because false rumors take your eyes off the real problem, and the real problem is not attempts by the prison system to modify prisoner behavior. The real scandal is that they don't give a damn about that. That the last thing in the world they want to do is change prisoners' behavior. That they're very satisfied with the fact that they have a large criminal population that's guaranteed to keep coming back to the prisons, therefore guaranteeing an increase in the prison budgets and increase in prison staff, and guaranteeing their jobs. So the real scandal there is that nothing is being done to change prisoners. Not that there's... Sure, you get kooky psychiatrists who can always get headlines by proposing something like this. But, to my knowledge, nothing of this sort. The only thing I could find out of Vacaville is they were using Prolixin. And during my stay at Vacaville, I talked to some of the psychiatrists at Vacaville, and I extracted promises from most of them that they would stop using Prolixin, because it does produce a zombie state, which is probably no different than the average middle-class suburban driving to his office, but still... and again, you have to realize that Vacaville is a difficult place because there are a lot of criminally insane people. You can't duck the hard fact that there are a lot of sick people in our society. And hopefully the next mutation will take care of that. But in a crowded urban environment, you get a lot of very violently sick people, and it is a problem. We shove it off to the prison system. But what are they going to do with a guy that absolutely will physically attack anyone that comes near him? I mean, it's easy to, we just brush that under the rug. So there are wards at Vacaville where they keep people, they're pretty locked up, and they're allowed out on roofs and cages. And every time I go out to the yard to play tennis or to get some athletics, these guys, it's a bad situation. They're like animals. They would come crowding to the cage and wave to me, and I'd stand there and talk back to them and tell them, get out, man, straighten up, until the gun guards would whistle and over the loudspeaker tell me to move or I'd get shot. But, yeah, Vacaville there's a lot of tragic stuff there, but there's no prison brutality that I know of.
You brought up G. Gordon Liddy, and I just found out a short time ago that Liddy was the assistant district attorney that busted you up in Millbrook. Can you give any description of your perceptions of Liddy based on that experience?
Yeah, I wrote a little book about that called Curse of the Oval Room, which is published by High Times, the slick magazine. Comes out of New York. Liddy was a very ambitious assistant DA, and he is I really almost like Liddy because he's such a comic opera figure. He would carry a gun around, and the state police hated him because he was always pulling his own operations. He was a young kid that believed all the the spy stories that he read, and he's a romantic. Anyway, he surveyed us. He led several midnight raids on my place, and he did get me. He did force me out of Dutchess County because it was just too much of a hassle to live there. Although none of the raids ever produced any, although I was indicted several times on marijuana charges, they never found a drop of marijuana because we had things pretty well hid. Anyway, after Liddy drove me out of the county, he ran for Congress on the conservative ticket in Dutchess County. And his campaign picture was a picture of me with a thing, a blurb about how Liddy had, driven degeneracy from the county. Liddy he ran for the Republican primary and was beaten by a man named Hamilton Fish. Then after the primary, Liddy was going to run on the conservative ticket, which would have drawn off votes from Hamilton Fish. So a deal was worked out that Hamilton Fish agreed to get Liddy out of the county to the White House and get him a federal job.
Fish later was on the House Judiciary Committee.
That's right. He became famous during that. He's a good guy. I don't blame him for this. He wanted to get elected. He was having a hot election against a Democrat. So it was for a Democrat seat, as a matter of fact. So the deal was that Liddy would go to the White House and not run against Fish. Of course, Fish was elected, and Liddy went to the White House. When Liddy got to the White House, his credentials were the leading dope cop in the country because he had got my butt.
Yeah.
Let me ask you one thing that's passed into the mythology and see if it's find out if it's true. There was one possibly apocryphal raid that Liddy led on Millbrook in which he appropriated a whole bunch of incense that was there and issued an indictment for paraphernalia and conspiracy to religion.
Yeah.
Is that true that was
That's
the
true,
charge?
yeah, that's true.
Okay, let's
When Liddy got to the White House, and he was a drug expert, as you know, Liddy was the mastermind behind the Project Intercept, and was a big. And then he was such an invaluable agent to the White House that they put him in charge of Watergate and the Ellsberg break-ins and so forth.
Yeah, Operation Intercept also brought in Caulfield and
That's right.
Alaskowitz. Yeah.
And I'm using when I was at Terminal Island Federal Prison. Liddy had just left, but he left me a friendly note saying, "Dear Tim, brother, wish you luck and hope we'll meet again," which was an interesting fallout. And the funny thing was that when Liddy was at Terminal Island, he belonged to a creative writing class, and he would attend it regularly. And finally, it was his turn to read what he had written. So he stood in front of the group like a West Point cadet in a very military, uptight situation. And as though he was barking out orders, he read a story which is about his raid on my Millbrook establishment, which he later got published in True magazine.
Yes, I read it there. In fact, we read it on the air. It made a big hit.
So I wrote to Allen Ginsberg just before I got out of prison. I said, "Look, just after I got out of prison, Allen Ginsberg is very involved in PEN. That's the PEN Club is the Association of Authors, and they're always trying to get writers out of prison, particularly writers who are in for their writing. And PEN did help to get me out." And I said, then Eldridge Cleaver got out, and I said, "Look, the only two writers left in prison are G. Gordon Liddy and Howard Hunt, and they're both in prison for political crimes. You know, you may not like their politics, but why don't you get the PEN Club to back the liberation of these fellow writers, Gordon Liddy and Howard Hunt, whom I consider comic figures, really."
In fact,
and Ellen wrote back and said, "Well, I've never thought of that, but I don't think they should be allowed out unless they tell all." Now, I thought that was a very funny, double morality here, that it's all right for them to tell all, but,
That's all the questions I have. I thank you very much for your excellent testimony. I'd like to present you with the Pacifica FM 90 T-shirt in appreciation.
Well, thank you.
We have been talking with Dr. Timothy Leary. My name is Steve Heimel, and I'm pretty well have exhausted my questions. I'm going to shut my mouth and let some of the others get into it. With us are Howard Perlstein, who is a Director of Publications for the Contemporary Arts Museum, and Dr. Henry Marshall, who works at the Texas Research Institute of Mental Science and is a psychologist, and more than that, is also into psychohistory. He's into figuring out the relationships between people, thoughts, and the times. Henry, I thought I might turn it over to you for a while, and I thought maybe you could go into the whole subject of Timothy Leary and his times.
Well, I wanted to, in the form of a question, to one of the skeletons, I think, that we didn't unearth is an image that has been created of Dr. Leary, of being some kind of brain-destroyed madman who was messed up by LSD, who was once a very great, perhaps, psychologist who somehow went crazy when he took too much acid. And I wanted to just ask you, have you had any testing that would be evidence that would discount the fact that your chromosomes have been broken and your brain has been destroyed? Is there any evidence, as it were, besides your ability to talk with us here?
Well, you've raised two ominous possibilities. You referred to the chromosome
Yes.
Myth about LSD. Now, I want to see, anytime I talk about drugs, I'm being pulled into the trap that I was pulled into in the 60s, that if an unscientific slander is made about a drug, if you say marijuana is addictive, and then I say, no, it's not, it sounds as though I'm somehow advocating marijuana. So with this qualification, I will risk answering your question about chromosomes.
About your chromosomes?
Well, in general, there's been no evidence that any of the drugs that developed in the 60s affect chromosomes. However, to take your question more personally, in 1969, I went to the Harvard Medical School and went through blood tests in which they did broken chromosome counts. As it turns out, I had significantly fewer chromosome breaks than the average person. It was like a mystery. How come I had such... Then this led to other accusations on the part of psychedelic politicians that I was a fraud, that I'd never taken LSD at all. So there you go. So that my chromosomes are doing dandy. Now, as far as brain damage and psychosis is concerned, I feel fine. I've never felt more productive. Sure, there are a lot of things that happened in the 60s. The 60s are kind of a crazy time. We were all running around or bobbing around on one of the biggest waves of cultural change in history. And each month in the 60s, enormous tidal waves were crashing over us, and there were very few of us that even had a glimpse of understanding as to what was happening. So there were many mistakes I made. There were many postures that I got into. I was easy to trap in public situations because I'm basically a courageous person. I have confidence in my own beliefs, so that I charge around. It was easy to make me look foolish, but that never bothered me, really.
You're listening to the Psychedelic Salon, where people are changing their lives one thought at a time.
As much as I would like to hear the rest of this interview right now, I'm going to cut it off here, and we'll pick up on the interview in a day or so with another podcast. But I thought that with everything that's going on right now with the Occupy Wall Street and the other Occupy demonstrations going on, that this is a good time to focus on maybe the ins and outs of civil disobedience. First of all, if you are involved in these actions, I hope that you keep in mind the fact that some of the people at the demonstrations may not be on the same page as you are, since there are obviously a few undercover screwheads who are working for the power elite to keep these things under control and spin them in the wrong direction. In fact, we just heard how they created hate and discontent among the revolutionaries of the 60s, and believe me, they're at it again. So I think that it's worth taking at least a few seconds here to replay what Dr. Leary had to say about not getting angry when confronting law enforcement, because that may happen. Here is what he had to say.
I don't believe in the politics of anger, and I regret this, because I think that it's our duty to educate the police, to relate to the police, to raise their consciousness, and I don't believe in us and them. I don't believe we can alienate ourselves from any aspect of society, particularly the people who run societies.
Now, in a day or so, I'll get us back to the Timothy Leary interview that we just heard. But before I close today's program, I want to play a short recording that I made of the live feed from the Occupy Wall Street demonstration, which, in my opinion, is a continuation of the revolution that Dr. Leary and the 60s generation were also engaged in. As you know, at livestream.com/Global Revolution, you can watch the feed coming out of Liberty Park in New York. In fact, just last night, they even had a live feed from inside a paddy wagon that was hauling some of the protesters off to jail. And that was after the police assaulted them and broke some of their glasses and their noses in the process. It's really amazing to be able to watch this action live, and just as we did for the Tahrir Square demonstrations in Egypt at the beginning of this year. And just to give you a little idea of what you'll hear on that feed, that I'll link to in the program notes, of course. Well, the other night I recorded a brief interview with a man who was just released from jail after having been arrested during the protest. And here's what he had to say, and you'll also kind of pick up on the casual atmosphere of what's going on. These are just people like you and I down there with their cameras and laptops and plugging into the net and letting us see what's going on. So here is one of the little commentaries that came over live feed the other night.
This is the monk that I was talking about that went on hunger strike in jail and wouldn't talk to the cops. Tell him your name, bro.
Hello, friends. I'm Dada. I'm a monk. I teach meditation. And yes, on Saturday, these policemen decided to block the road on the Brooklyn Bridge. They got in front of us and back of us, as they do, and they said that we were blocking the traffic. Actually, they were. And there I was at the back of the group. Didn't realize that there was no parade behind me. I thought I was in the middle and I was at the end. I turned around, and there were all of these police across the street, the white shirts and the blue shirts, and these trucks ready to pick us up, facing the wrong direction, driving the wrong way on another violation of the law. And then I saw, they're going to arrest me, everybody probably. So I said, what's the best way to get arrested? I don't want to be going with like a dog with my tail between my legs. So I sat down and do what I do. I do meditation, and thought, that's really the way I want to be arrested. And then they came and said, you're under arrest for blocking traffic, stand up. And I just continued doing meditation. And then they said, you have to get up. They tried to lift me. I just became like a dead body. And they said, behaving like this, you can get in more trouble. But, I just stayed like a sack of potatoes, and they picked me up to all 212 pounds. And then tried to put me in the van, which they did. Then when we got in the van, the policeman said something really strange. He said, okay, there are no more cameras around now, so you can stop acting out this thing, which I wasn't doing it for that. I was really angry with these police for the way they're behaving. I mean, they should make a distinction between crowd control and riot. We weren't rioting.
They actually said that a couple times. They every time we're in jail, they would talk to us and they would say, there are no more cameras around. You don't have to protest anymore.
Right. So they're always giving this message that the reason we're doing it is for some selfish purposes, which is, I'm a psychologist as well, and we know that people project their own issues on other people. So I just took it as their problem, not mine. And then I decided, why should I talk to these people? They're not doing the right thing. So I decided just to be quiet, not to speak to them. And also, one of the rules we follow as monks is we don't eat food that is given by mean-minded people. So I didn't want to take food from the policemen. So they offered me food, but I didn't eat it. But what was really inspiring for me was all the people that were in the lockup with me. As we went through, got ourselves registered or whatever you call it, as we walked into the room to join everybody else, people would clap and, sort of welcome us like we were stars or heroes or something. And then the other thing was that when I got up and explained to everybody why I was doing what I was doing, they called a meeting at that very moment and facilitated anybody want to join Dada and his decision not to take any food from the jail. And 55, all the people, there are about 100 plus people in the room, 55 people decided not to eat food in solidarity with me. I was very touched by that. So I think it's important for everybody to know that there's more than a demonstration that's happening here. This is a community. It's teaching people how to live together, share their pleasures and pains, and to support each other, and not to be confrontational about their positions, but just support people in how they're trying to be authentic in changing the way things are done in the world today. The other thing was very funny, or you can say concerning for me, was when they talked about us, they said, how many bodies are in your truck? They said, we have 10 bodies. So instead of saying people or persons, some people said, we're citizens, we're not bodies. So I started thinking, I thought of this song, you're nobody till somebody loves you. So I guess these police didn't love us, so we were nobodies, only bodies.
Yeah, they called us bodies numerous times in the when we were waiting outside the police station. There was me and Dada were in the same paddy wagon. There's a couple other guys in the paddy wagon that I wish they were here right now. That I wish I could find them right now so you guys can see them too. But they'll be on. I'll make sure that they get on here too.
Anyway, I had a really great time. I'm very inspired. I think this is the greatest thing, to see everybody here together. It's a cathartic experience. It's a demonstration. It's a statement of unity. It's, I got this morning, every cell in my body was just popping like popcorn with happiness and inspiration. Having been to jail.
So somebody asked where they can find you. I want to say that you can find them in Zacuto Park. Where can they find you?
Well, I'm here every day from 1 until 8, unless I'm in jail. I missed 2 days. But you can get me online. I have a webpage, dadaprana.com, DADAPRANA.com.
Yeah, somebody write that down. It's dadaprana.com.
Yeah. I got all my articles about meditation, and you can contact me there by email if you want. Anyway.
Hey, thanks, Tiana. Thanks, Theo.
Who's that?
They wrote your website. They wrote your website
maybe you
down.
want to see my slogan on my shirt.
Hold on, let's see. Can you guys see the shirt? People who profit from the suffering of others are immoral. People who suffer from the profit of others are immoral. All right. Look, dude. We are with you from here. We're with you too. So, hey guys, I think pretty soon they've got to go over to the drum circle because it's popping over there right now. There's a lot of stuff going on over there. So we're gonna take the live feed over to the drum circle. It was nice to hang out with y'all. Is there any last questions that you guys really want me to answer before I walk up? Can you say the name of the gentleman who was singing with you in the red? Who was stinging? I don't know what stinging means. Do you guys realize that the whole world is watching, and what we really expect that there is no turning from back? Yeah, there's no turning back from this. We don't plan on turning back. We know the whole world is watching, and I hope the whole world continues watching.
What's 15th
welcome.
October?
Hey, Monk, say something about 15th October. I think that's another big march that we have. That's not this weekend. It's next weekend.
Somebody took my photo of my shirt. A lot of people take a picture of this. People who profit from the sufferings of others are immoral. And he asked me, is there any message you want to give the youth? And I said, get ready to go to jail. It's one of the best. It's almost like a university. It's like an ashram. Go to jail, you get to understand what the police are also going through, because they've got some issues too. And what I found out is that these guys have a union, but they can't strike. So they've been negotiating for 2 years for better benefits, and they're not getting anything because they have no way to pressure. And the government spends a lot of money for them for, material things to make their work efficient, but they don't give a damn about the policemen.
Hey there, somebody asked how old you were. The Monk is infinite.
Well, I'm 68 years old, going on 28.
All right, guys, so we're going to take you guys over to the drum circle. I'll see you again another time. Thanks for hanging out with me and the Monk.
Bye. Thanks a lot.
See you guys.
Well, that's going to do it for now, and so I'll close today's podcast by reminding you that this and most of the podcasts from the Psychedelic Salon are available for you to use in your own audio projects under the Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 3.0 license. And if you have any questions about that, just click the Creative Commons link at the bottom of the Psychedelic Salon webpage, which you can get to via psychedelicsalon.us. And if you are interested in some of the stories that may or may not have led you and me to where we're sharing this moment together right now, well, you can read a few of them in my novel, The Genesis Generation, which is available in Kindle and other ebook formats, as well as a pay-what-you-can audiobook read by me. And you can find out more about that at genesisgeneration.us. And for now, this is Lorenzo signing off from Cyberdelic Space. Be well, my friends, and I'm going to leave you with another short soundbite from the live feed of the Operation Wall Street protest. It's a song by a young man whose friend is now serving in Afghanistan, and the reason I'm playing it is simply because it reminds me quite a bit of the things that we heard during the anti-war protests of the 60s. But back then it was next to impossible to find out what was going on the front lines because the corporate media just didn't want us to know about it. But today we have the internet, and that is a real game changer in my opinion. So now this is a bit rough and the sound quality isn't too good because, we're talking about a microphone on a laptop here. But it's a good sampling of the raw emotion that's beginning to come to the surface all over the world as we head to the massive demonstrations that are being planned everywhere for October 15th, 2011. And I'm sure I'll see you there.
When the helmets hit the ground at the drums of dawn, where the thunder roars as the trumpets sound for the children born by the smoking guns in atomic flames, where the ties all come undone. When the helmets hit the ground, will we hide in shame from our own mistakes while we place the blame? Or will freedom hang from a gallows pole while the hands of greed distort control? In a house of cards that was built to break down, where actions warn of a day that's coming round, when a judgment call's gonna even things out. So ask yourself, what's it really all about? When they say that independence is the goal we're fighting for, could it really be another way to filter out the poor as we stand within the shadow of a never-ending war? Pay attention when the helmets hit the ground. When the helmets hit the ground, is it worth the cost of the land we've raped and the lives we've lost? Where the prices rise as the dying fall for a bill of rights that's only done them wrong. When the helmets hit the ground, it's the perfect crime. Fill the tombstone rows with the fire in line for the wayward youth gathered far and wide to the pearly gates with an advertised life. And as one signs up, there's another shot down. The flags wave high and the bodies pile round by the seven seals of the blood red skies. The devils dance while the angels cry for the faithful but misguided who have died without a name. For the mothers and the fathers clutching picture frames in pain of their sons and of their daughters they may never see again. Better listen when the helmets hit the ground. When the helmets hit the ground, will you ask your God if he'll shed his grace on a graveyard plot where the monuments of our pride once stood for a crooked crown of brotherhood? And our numbers up with another one down. The walls close in on the Armageddon bound, and our time grows short. Better figure things out. The horsemen ride while the chimes are ringing loud for a torn and tattered country, and the battle she is known for the innocent without a choice who faces death alone. From the bunkers to the barracks, bring them all back home. For another helmet hits the ground. Cool. Thank you all for letting me play that. Thank you. Yeah, everybody come out here. This is awesome, and we're changing the world. My name is Matt Pless. That's Pless, and all my stuff's free, so look me up if you want to find that song. Thank you.